It began with a promise of mercy, a more humane way to die. Before the guillotine, executions in France were messy, brutal, and often botched. The rich were beheaded by sword or axe, the poor hanged or broken on the wheel. Death was not always swift. It sometimes required multiple strikes, and the suffering could stretch for agonizing minutes. The same revolutionaries who once applauded it soon found their own heads beneath its blade. Robespierre himself was executed by the very guillotine he praised. Scientists debated for centuries. Did the victim remain conscious after the blade fell? Some claimed eyes blinked, faces flushed, mouths moved as if the soul hadn't quite left the body. But its legacy remained sharp. It reminds us how even the most civilized societies can embrace cruelty under the illusion of justice, that even when wrapped in progress, death still demands a price, and history never forgets those who paid it. How the line between reform and revenge can blur in times of chaos, and how the tools we invent for mercy can become monsters when wielded by the wrong hands. It remains one of history's most macabre mysteries. One famous story tells of Charlotte Corday, who assassinated revolutionary leader Marat after her beheading. A witness claimed her cheeks blushed with anger when the executioner slapped her face. Others tried to speak or react after decapitation. Whether myth or fact, the thought haunted generations. It had become more than a device, it was a symbol of fear, a power gone mad, of a nation turning on itself. So when Dr. Joseph Ignace Guillotine, a physician and politician, proposed a mechanical device that would end life instantly with a single stroke, it was hailed as a step toward equality. It was transported from Paris to towns across the country, set up in public squares, used well into the 20th century. In fact, the last public execution in France happened in 1939 when crowds still gathered in the early morning darkness to watch a man die. Compared to hangings gone wrong or burnings at the stake, it was merciful. That's the paradox of the guillotine. It was born from Enlightenment ideals and rational thinking, yet used to silence opposition and enforce terror. It was meant to level the playing field between noble and peasant, yet became a weapon of mass political execution. And astonishingly, the final execution by guillotine took place in 1977. That is right, while Star Wars was playing in theaters. France was still using this relic of the revolution to take lives. The death penalty wasn't officially abolished in France until 1981. Everyone, regardless of class, would face the same clean, swift death. What began as a reform turned into a symbol of terror. The guillotine made its bloody debut in 1792, during the height of the French Revolution, a time when heads rolled almost daily. In the name of liberty, equality, and fraternity, the machine was simple in design. A tall wooden frame with a heavy angled blade suspended at the top. The condemned would be led to the scaffold, bound, and placed face down in a wooden cradle. A lever was pulled, the blade fell, and in a fraction of a second, a life was ended. The crowd would roar, cheer, or sometimes gasp in horror, but they always came back for more. The executioner, Charles Henry Sanson, became as famous as the blade he commanded, dispatching thousands, including King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. What made the guillotine so infamous wasn't just its efficiency, it was its frequency. During the Reign of Terror from 1793 to 1794, the guillotine became a national obsession. Revolutionary leaders like Robespierre saw it not as a tool of death, but of justice and purification. Enemies of the revolution, real or imagined, were arrested and marched to the scaffold. Trials were swift and sentences swifter. The guillotine didn't sleep. It claimed over 16,000 official victims in that single year alone, with thousands more dying without record. The Place de la Revolution, where it stood, became soaked with blood. People nicknamed it the National Razor. Yet there was a dark irony in the machine meant to equalize death. Even after the revolution, the guillotine remained France's official method of execution. There are also chilling questions that never fully went away. Despite its horrors, the guillotine was considered progressive in its time. It was predictable, fast, and spared victims the agony of prolonged death. Today, the guillotine is locked in glass cases and museum displays. Tourists visit replicas in Paris. History classes mention it with a shudder. The guillotine was not just a machine, it was a message, a warning carved into wood and steel.